Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. In today's episode, I sit down with guitarist and vocalist Ian Thornley from the band Big Wreck. Known for the rich, layered sound and Ian's masterful blending of influences ranging from progressive rock to grunge, Big Wreck has carved out a unique niche in the music industry. We'll explore Ian's creative process to songwriting and his burning guitar playing. Here's my interview. Ian, welcome.
Well, good for having us, man. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of you as a singer, as a songwriter, and as a guitar player, and I wish that you would post more guitar stuff.
Some of the sort of, the hustly stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I kind of, and I've talked to a lot of other guitar players about this too, and you kind of like ripping around, and it's like, okay, well, that bit was clean. That bit was good. Just post that, And it's like, if I have a thing, like I just want to play this part or this piece or something like that. It's like half of it I want to use on a record or something.
Sure.
So and I know I have friends who post those things, and that's how they remember them, as opposed to just a voice memo or whatever. Mm-hmm. They'll just post it up on Instagram, and then when it's time for a record, they just start digging through their old posts and like, oh, that bit's good. But yeah, and also my basement has a real bad hum.
Okay.
But that's kind of a lame excuse. Because you know what? There's too many other guitar players that are doing stuff that's really
that's not true. No.
That's the truth.
No, you're an amazing
I'll
guitar
some
player.
Slide stuff every now and then, but I've used all my slide tricks on previous
Your slide
posts.
playing is phenomenal.
Thank you. But
Really
again, I have like one or two tricks, and then I've already used them. Got some likes, and
Not surprising. We were just talking before we started, and we were talking about Keith Jarrett, and I said, "You know Keith Jarrett," and of course Ian knows Keith Jarrett because he's such a great musician, and great musicians know about great musicians.
I'll tell you, I was a keyboard player, piano player before I picked up a guitar.
Okay,
and I was in a pop outfit when I was a kid, and it was one of those Secret Santa things.
Okay.
And the drummer, Howie, was a jazz head. Like, he liked jazz, and just gave me the Cold concert as a gift. And I've made it past the first side since many times, but that first side I listened to for maybe a couple of years. Like, I basically learned most of it by ear. That's how obsessed with that I was. And then from there, I'd go and see him when he was in town, and I'd hear the stories about how he'd scold people for coughing or showing up late. And I'd just think, well, yeah, I'm kind of with him on that, because look what he's doing. And like, he comes out with a clean slate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wondered about that. Like, how?
Yeah.
Just wait for, and then was that one story where somebody says, C-sharp major. And he's like, thank you. And then he just kind of launches into something like that kind of stuff. And we were saying, like, there's a lot of artists and musicians that I think are brilliant. And there's a lot of virtuosos. But when the word genius gets thrown around, like, by someone who penned a clever rhyme, I like that. Like, I think Keith Jarrett is you've probably got more to say on that, but I'm like, that guy's a genius. Ted Green is another guy who springs to mind. Wow. Where it's just like, it's genius. It just blows my mind. I'm just like, there you go, that guy. The stuff he was able to do that he'd just pull up from out of nowhere. Like, he would check out and it would just happen. And it was, I haven't met Julian, and I'd like to. I'm fascinated by that guy. Just that, like, and I said, simultaneously makes me want to practice and quit. But yeah, it's amazing.
Who are some other people that you like? Who are some other guitar players and other instrumentalists?
All the usual suspects. I mean, and a lot of times, like, I never go into the dungeon of the comment section on something you post. Mm-hmm. And so what Dave says when you post and ghost. Yeah, I sometimes I'm guilty of, like, what people say, that sounds like Steve Morris, that sounds like Eric Johnson. I'm like, I know. It's kind of what I'm going for. Or if it's a Knopfler, or if it's, just all the best. I've rarely gone into, dove deeply into one player. Ry Cooder, I dove pretty deep. Sonny Landreth, I dove pretty deep, as far as the slide thing goes.
Yeah. We were talking just earlier, you're really hands-on with making of your records.
Hands-on in the sense that I like I like.
You know what you like.
Yeah. And I can often be turned and swayed, like with Garth Richardson. I'm just like, just his trick bag is huge. And I'm sort of stealing, but it really is just learning. There's always stuff to be learned. And I'm such a nerd for sound and atmosphere. And him and I were just talking, and he was talking about the sound of our records. And I'm like, to me, that's almost as important as the song.
What are great sounding records?
Great sounding records?
Yeah, great sounding records.
Oof, that's a tough one. But I mean, all there's always the, the Steely Dan ones that are just sort of unbeatable.
Yeah.
And then there's some rock records. Like I think Dogman, the King's X record.
Oh my God.
I don't know if a heavy rock. I think Nick's made a couple records that are.
We talked about Black Gives Way to Blue that Nick made.
Yeah.
Is Alice in Chains is incredibly good sounding.
It's a great
Dogman.
Yeah, I don't know, and one of the things that I've learned from Dogman, is when you're coming close to the end of a record and either you're mixing it or you're getting ready to, and you start A/B into shit, I don't know what the secret sauce is there, and it's one of those things I'll probably never know. But when I listen to, if I just hone in on one aspect of it, I'm like, it's a different guitar sound for Ty, right? Like he went to a sort of a bigger, chewier sound.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's a great sound, but it's not like oh my God, I've never heard anything like it.
Yeah.
The bass sound is the bass sound. Let's all be, Doug is Doug. And
yes.
And the drum sound, it's like, it's a good drum sound. But it's not like I've never heard a drum sound like that before. But something about everything together.
Agreed.
What
about Zeppelin? What about a Zeppelin record? Which is the best sounding Zeppelin record?
I don't know if you can really say. Probably Physical Graffiti. I think they sort of honed in on something there. Four is
amazing.
Just they're all.
I like One. I mean, One has a very different sound than the rest of the records. Yeah. I think Bonham was playing a smaller kit on that. I think he played a 22-inch kick drum on that.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. The panning, the kick drum's not quite in the center, and the snare's not quite in the center.
Doing that Glyn Johns thing.
Yeah, and it sounds really so.
That's raw.
Yeah, and the snare transients have the distortion on the drum transients. It sounds amazing, just overdriving the preamps.
So that's something that we've been talking about. This is Sekou is our drummer, and we just came out of the studio with Nick.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've talked about a lot. Is like everybody wants the Bonzo snare set,
right?
That's a superphonic, and the whole bit.
Yep.
And those are great, but they have to be played right, And
totally.
I've never, like, everyone's got close, a big roomy sound. You can just start pumping some compression into those rooms, and you can get pretty close, but it doesn't sound like.
I've never heard.
You have to be him to get the sound.
I never heard anyone get a John Bonham snare sound like it.
Yeah,
Wait, hits
and everybody thinks it's a wadoosh, but it really isn't.
Not.
It's just touch and just sort of mixing himself as he was playing.
Correct.
And that's one of the things that we dicked around with on that sort of philosophy. If I'm going for a squishy room sound on a tune, make sure that the drummer, make sure Sekou hears that. So he's going to play to that, He's not hearing just the direct dum, dum, boom. He's going to hear boom, guys, he's going to hear, and he might ease up on his hats a little bit and maybe not hit the cymbals so hard.
All the session drummers, I interviewed Bernard Purdy, I've interviewed Vinnie Colaiuta, I've interviewed Steve Gadd. They all talk about balancing in the room.
Yeah, that reminds me of a John Suhr quote. It was like, the best cure for bad tone is practice. And it's the same thing with a guitar player, right? The amount of stuff that you start putting in front of the amp to get it to do the thing, even if it's just a rhythm part. It's like usually guitar cable amp is the best.
I'm such a fan of your guitar playing. I want to know about the people that Eric Johnson, you like?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I adore him. We were lucky enough to, we did a few shows. I remember it because it was a big cigarette company sponsored the thing. So we had this budget, and like, who do you want to get? We can get some guest stars. Had, what do you call them? Rope dancers or whatever. Those, people that.
Yeah. With the silk things. Yeah. Yeah.
Those people were like, there's intermissions and taiko, Japanese taiko drum is amazing. And it's like, well, who do you want to bring up? And Brian and I looked at each other. We're like, Eric Johnson. We called him up, and he's like, sweetest guy. He's like, sure. What songs? I was like, what songs? I went, oh my god. Like, what did we send him? And he came up. He was the sweetest man. I'm sure you've met him, and
he's right there before.
Anybody who's met him knows he's just
so nice.
Kind of
oh my god,
the best guy.
Yeah.
And very generous with, like, how'd you do that? How'd you do that? What was that? Oh, that's just a, And everybody you ask him about, he's like, that's the best guitar player I've ever heard. He's like, really? But yeah, so I got to pick up on a lot of, it was still a mystery to me. A lot of what he was doing was just a mystery, and still is. But, there's a lot of guitar players that I just, there's no way to imitate Jimmy Page's soloing.
No.
It's impossible.
No, he can't even imitate
either you get it or you don't. Some people are like, it's sloppy. And I'm like, it's Jimmy. It's just amazing. Hendrix, there's another thing that, I don't know, there's something terrifying about him. I really listen to how he just sort of launches off and just says, whatever happens, happens. Like that kind of freedom and fearlessness, I think is, that's a pretty beautiful thing to listen to.
I'd like to take a second to talk to you about this channel. This is actually Rick Beato too. I've had it since the beginning of my main channel, and many of you are not subscribed. As a matter of fact, 87% of the people that watch this channel regularly are not subscribed. So I encourage you to hit the subscribe button on this channel and on my main channel. This will help me get even more of my dream guests and help continue to grow both channels. Thank you. And would you spend time figuring out stuff when you were a kid?
You'd be surprised. Like not as much as, I'd hone in on one particular thing. And back then there was no YouTube thing where you could, it was you spent time with it. And
okay, what do you think about that? About the fact that people now can watch YouTube and learn anything without having to use their ear?
I think that's a double-edged sword, really, because I think it becomes more ingrained in you and becomes more part of your DNA the more time you spent learning something. That
right.
Mahjoor on Physical Graffiti,
yeah.
that acoustic piece.
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, what is I figured out the tuning and everything. There was no
book.
Yeah. And then I was just like, once I had the tuning, I was like, oh, he's just doing this sort of banjo roll thing. Oh, this is kind of easy. And then I was able to recreate that sound whenever I wanted. And it became part of, I'm not playing that song every night, but that helps shape part of the way you hear. And what comes out is a result of what you hear. So I do think it becomes sort of imprinted on you a little more. But on the flip side of that, when you can just learn whatever you want to learn, wherever you want to learn it, who knows what's possible from that.
Right.
So call me old fashioned. I prefer to, earn it. But there's kids today who are doing mind blowing stuff.
Well, they have all this knowledge that's out there available to learn from without having to go to a teacher, having to figure it out by ear, so they can get a base level of playing that is up to, really, really high level and work on other things.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do wonder,
at the expense of having their ear developed, I think.
Yeah, that's the other part of it is before you learn theory, depending on how far you get on your own with your ear. It's just that theory is just putting names to things that you've probably already heard.
Right.
So I don't want to bash. I'm not going to shit on people that are just, sort of learning like that. And then instantly posting like, look what I can do. Because it's like, yeah, it's amazing.
Okay. So I got to ask you this. Why are there so many great Canadian musicians?
I don't know.
I was trying to think about, if I
per capita, right? There's
just so many of my favorite.
Joni, Neil,
Gordon Lightfoot.
And there's plenty that probably aren't as known down here that are just staggering, beautiful musicians.
Okay, I have a theory.
Shoot.
My theory is that people learn to play and write songs really well where the climate is
It's cold. You stay inside.
Yes. Is there something to that?
Um,
I've always believed this.
well, it's nicer to write a song outside in the sun, but I think there's something to that. I also think there's something with Canadians that it might be called tallest poppy syndrome, you know? Where it's like Rush and they break huge, and then all the other musicians would be like, You know? It's just sort of a, you want to
Wait, come on. Nobody
keep everything.
Nobody was mad about Rush.
Well, no, I that's a bad example.
Nobody
That's a bad
begrudged
example.
Rush, did
because
they?
Rush is one of the most, when I
You're a huge Rush fan, right? You love Rush?
not a huge fan.
Interesting.
Not
Okay.
a huge fan.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of the guys. I love Ged and I love Al. They're wonderful guys, and just they're absolute ambassadors to anyone who's younger than them coming up, especially in rock and roll. Like that, just great guys. But I was never a big fan.
Okay.
Once we signed on with SRO Anthem as our management and then our label,
Yep.
and really got to know Ray and the whole team there, Peggy, everybody in the building. I had this new appreciation for how it really went down. And they were going to be this sort of new, like Zeppelin was breaking and they were sort of going down that path. And then they just kind of like, it almost happened, wasn't happening. And then they stuck to their guns. And there's a lesson in there for me and for a lot of people. Which would just like, they came out with 2112. It was like, this is going to be your last shot, kids.
It's such a weird last shot, too.
Yeah, they're like, you know what? Let's do what we want to do. Let's go out in style. And they did that, which is like, yeah, that's a challenge to any listener.
Right.
And it's you know, there you go.
I love 2112. Of course,
beautiful.
I'm 11 years older than you, so, and being from Rochester is, I've said this other times, is like being Canadian.
Yeah.
Basically, right? It's 32 miles across Lake Ontario to Toronto. And I always thought that, oh, well, nobody knows about Rush except people in Rochester and Buffalo and Syracuse, and then people around Lake Ontario know about Rush. I had no idea. I always just thought that these people were famous, just because they got played on the radio all the time in upstate New York. But then it's like Rush is this massively big band. But that was kind of the era. It's really more of my era growing up.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like what the stuff I was exposed to, like we had Exit Stage Left.
Yeah.
We had that LP. My brother and I were big fans of Subdivisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that song, and that song still gets me. It has a vibe. And we did a cover of Closer to the Heart. I'm like, man, that guitar line is like, there's some magic in there. They've done so much great stuff that it's undeniable. But did it grab me when I was a kid? No, Supertramp grabbed me when I was a kid. Pink Floyd, The Who, Zeppelin, that all really grabbed me. And I was too young for that stuff. So
it's interesting. You did
Abacab. There's a great sounding record.
Abacab.
Oh,
great record.
Give me a break.
Genesis made a lot of great sounding records.
Yeah, I'm a huge Genesis.
Yeah,
freak. I'm still working on these guys, trying to get them into
through their career. They made many great sounding records. They made great sounding records in the 70s. The Trick of the Tail is one of the best sounding records of all time. Period.
Beautiful.
But and they just kept making great sounding records. You did a cover of the Russians, the Sting song, and which I loved. And you're a fan. You must be a fan of Sting and his solo record, The Police and Sting, right?
Huge. Yeah, obsessed. Beyond. And I've always said that about Sting. I think he's an unfairly gifted songwriter. It's,
unfairly gifted in what ways?
Because I've sort of looked up what his process is. Mm-hmm. And that, him, like a lot of people, that write from the inside out, write from the top line.
It's so easy for him.
Yeah. And I'm like, come on, man. Because it's nice. It's like
go out and take a walk, and I read, it's like, what?
And this popped out. Like, and he's such a talented musician as well as just a lyricist and storyteller. Like that's the part of it that I think makes him so great, is that musically it's so beautiful and put together so well. And then lyrically, it's like, it's never too heady. It's never too, what's the word, sappy, but a love song. And you're just, there's so many of his songs that I'm just in awe of. And he was like, yeah, well, I had fields of gold. Like, what does that mean? And it's like, I do the same thing, but it's on such a different level. The stuff that comes out doesn't even make the record, I'm just, he's, Springsteen's another one. I'm just obsessed. We actually we had a day off in Malwa.
Okay.
And I instantly woke up and I started singing Johnny 99. They closed down the auto plant in Malwa late last month. Like my dad brought me to those shows when I was a kid. And
I want to ask you about your guitars. I played played this guitar.
Yeah.
And you have the V-shaped neck on these guitars. This is a nerdy thing. I'm going to get nerdy here because I want to ask Ian because I'm such a fan of his guitar playing.
Is
this a 16 radius also?
Yeah, they're all flat 16. You can do compound and that feels great too. But I just kind of, the whole idea was just consistency.
Yeah.
So with most V-necks, they kind of round out about here. They'll start to see out a bit.
Yeah.
Just because John explained it, the way the saws or whatever, you're pushing the wood through and they'd open up. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I was like, is there a way to have that V go all the way up? Because it feels great with your thumb there. It feels great with your thumb there. And a lot of the time, especially standing at a mic, my thumb is going to be here.
Yeah.
And if you want to hang three, as they say, really grab a hold of a note, your thumb is,
I've never heard anyone say hang three.
Hang three.
Yeah, what does that mean? Is that a Canadian thing or something? Oh, got it.
Yeah, it's a bit goofy. But yeah, and like I said before, I love the idea of something that looks like it, like an old beefed up Mustang, but kind of plays like a Ferrari, So
okay, what about telly? What about telly shapes? You like the telly shape?
Yeah, I like them all. But I did when I was in college. I was a huge Steve Morse guy.
Yeah,
and I didn't buy it. I traded for a Telly Plus Deluxe, like 91. Still have it, and I used it all over those first couple albums. But it had it's like the Radiohead Johnny Greenwood style one.
Yeah,
but had a trem on it. But it had room. It was routed for a humbucker here, and it had a swimming pool route there. So I was just like, oh, I can do the whole Steve Morse like a 4 pickup thing.
Your first record was all on tape?
Yeah. The first record was demos. Like those were, our management company at the time paid for these demos. And then Atlantic was like, we love these demos.
Was it Craig Kelman that signed you guys?
Craig Kelman was in our dressing room before we were after a show one night. He's like, you guys are going to be on Atlantic. It wasn't a great big bidding war or any of that, those stories. It wasn't. There was a few labels that were sniffing around.
When your first record came out, myself and all my friends were huge fans.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about it kind of appealed to our senses, and I always find that
can be a
well,
it's a tightrope.
No, but historically, I mean, I would say that the Police are a musician's band.
Yeah, good call. And you know what? I'll take that.
And Led Zeppelin was a musician's band. Yeah. They happen to be incredibly popular with other people too. But bands that are musician bands.
I just said again back to the Sting thing. It's like I'm as much a sucker for a really beautiful melody or a beautiful chord change as I am for, a ripping guitar solo. It's not really about that for me. Like I said, that's kind of my hobby. There's plenty of songs that we have where there's no solo.
But
because it wouldn't work. It'd be gratuitous. There's some songs that have solos that are very gratuitous because it kind of works in there. It's never like it's a hard thing because I like having a solo in a song where there's a beautiful melody. Yeah, you have to be really honest with yourself and what you're hearing coming out of the speakers. Does it sound like "Look at Me"? Look what I can do. Me too. Does it sound like that, or does it sound like it just kind of works with the song? Or if it sounds like, hey, look what I can do, check it out. Is that kind of cool and chic? You know, is there a cheek to it? Is it a bit goofy? And I've said this before many times, that the biggest ego in the room always has to be the song. And sometimes, especially with producers, big ego musicians, like all of us, if you're a musician, you've spent that amount of time, you're going to have a bit of something, you know, that's going to want to dig your heels in on an idea. The biggest lesson you could ever learn is just listen to the speakers. Is that they don't lie. And you have to be really honest. Well, like the example I was going to give is like we were in the studio a few weeks ago with Nick, and it was a monstrous, I think 18 songs we had that it was like, okay, we got to cut them quick because studio time is expensive.
Yeah.
And initially we were
you cut 18 basic tracks?
Yeah. We did the drums.
In how many days?
14 we had.
Okay.
We had a few days of pre-pro.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, we have 14 days. And this, you know, we want different drum sounds for all this stuff.
Yeah.
Different bass sounds for all of it. Guitar was going to be an afterthought.
Yeah.
And Sekou got through the drums in really record time. Dave set a new record where he did 18 songs in a day and a half. Perfect. Guy doesn't miss. Unbelievable. So now it's like, and while that's going down, Nick's like, Ian, you got to call your guy and get some guitar shit down here because, you know, and then it was just
like, because you had extra time left over.
The idea was to just get as much stuff that's, you know, real in that big room at Noble Street. It's just a great sounding room, great sounding desk. SSL, they had a BCM 10, and there's a bunch of, you know, all the goodies, everything you'd want to get those kind of guitar sounds.
Now you still play through real amps. We talked about this.
Yep. Right now, I'm doing a hybrid thing.
Okay.
Where it started, we did a theater run in Ontario that was like makeup shows. That were initially going to be like a sort of an acoustic broken down thing. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. So I don't want to do those shows. And they're like, well, you kind of have to. So I was like, okay, what if we do Big Wreck? I was like, well, these rooms are intimate theaters with people sitting right there. And I'm renting 3 412s. You know, people, and a lot of them, like, you know, they're theater, they're sort of season ticket holder kind of thing. So there's going to be some blue hairs in there. They're like, what's the Big Wreck, eh? They're going to come down and see the big show. And I don't want to hurt them with, I love just, and when you hit certain chords and things move and things get kind of blurry. It's like, that's awesome. They can't do that here. So Sur has a reactive load.
I've got it here.
Yeah. Great box.
Yep.
So we kind of use those in the effort to bring down the volume. We turn the cabinets around. We've been doing that on recent tours. But I'm on in-ears. We're all on ears. So we kind of figured and I love the sound of the reactive load.
Okay.
So I just use a greenback and the V30, which is what I use in real life.
Yeah.
I mix those two speakers together.
So your in-ears are getting the reactive load.
And you send that to front of house as well. Yeah. And we're just kind of doing that. And I'm just like, wow, my vocals I could really hear myself.
Right.
And we'll do festival shows. We're free balling. We're going. So, and then it'll be full cabs and they'll be set to stun and set to fun, if you will. Because there's nothing better than standing in front of a rig. And
are you channel switching for different? Oh, yeah. Do you have one set clean and then?
Yep. I have, there's two main amps that are going clean to dirty.
Okay.
And then there's one that's just set to dirty. It's kind of a gummy, that's called a hedgehog. It's kind of my favorite sound. It's not dissimilar to what this thing's doing right now. That sort of chewy, gummy. I just love that. And then there's a bunch of stuff for wet. The Axe FX is doing all the delays and reverbs and stuff. It's a lot of shit, and it's just going into these boxes that are going in front of the house. So one of those goes down. You know, the front row is going to have a night because we're going to have to plug in real cabs, and it's going to be bloody loud. And to get those amps to feel right, even in your ears, they have to be pushing a certain amount of air. I don't have the Variac thing. It just seems like that would be more stuff to add to it. More points of failure for this already. Like poor Shane, his hair was dark brown before the tour. It's a lot of stuff.
How much do in-ears help your voice?
I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't be able to sing. You know, we're in the middle of a 4 in a row right now.
Yeah.
At the beginning of a 4 in a row. You know, at my age and for doing this for that long, I doubt it would be. But with in-ears, like Miles was the first guy that I ever saw with in-ears. We became fast friends in like 98 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard anyone sing like that. I'd never heard anyone warm up their voice.
Oh my God.
He was the guy he hit me
3 hour
to a lot of
warm
stuff.
up.
Yeah, he hit me to a lot of stuff. Mine's 2. But yeah, and just the in-ear thing and just how he was singing. He had a little mixer behind him for himself. I was like, wow, man. He was doing all these weird noises in the van before the show. I'm like, what are you doing in there? I'm warming up. Miles is pretty much the top of the pile, I think, as far as rock and roll singers go right now. Like
He's amazing.
You're not going to get much better than that. And you know, one of my favorite people as well. And it's just ripping guitar player.
Great guitar player. You guys are similar in that way. Great guitar players, amazing singers.
I'm a little taller.
You are tall.
I'm taller than mine. It's the only thing I got on it.
Show me some of your like fat, cool favorite licks.
You want ripping stuff.
I want ripping stuff. Yeah.
That's nice and fuzzy. It's the same thing as you do the Billy Gibbons one.
Are you doing that with your pinky or your ring or middle finger? Middle finger, okay.
Yeah, so you bend all the way up to the 7. Yeah, it's fun.
Come on, that's when you hear that sound like that with you only can hear that through a real amp.
Yeah.
Only will do that.
I do that with, there's a song called All Is Fair where I start it with a fuzzed out, and it's just, when you do these kind of, there's that lower,
yes,
as I'm bending up, it's going,
yeah.
It goes, so it's going opposite to where I'm bending.
Yeah.
And if you add a big fuzz to that, it really becomes pronounced.
Ian, how do you bend the strings like that? That's What do you got on there? You 11s or something? 11s.
Yeah.
So 11 through 52?
No, 48, 49.
Okay.
And I'm down a half, so that helps. But I've always just kind of like, grip it kind of thing.
When you do solos on your records, will you do multiple takes and comp them, or what
Depends.
do you do?
There's a few different ways to do. It depends on the kind of solo you're going for. If you're looking for that sort of like jump off the top stair and land on the bottom, like usually a live kind of thing is better. But even then, if I have a live thing that I like, and I'm like, okay, that's going to work. I will still go through and, is there anything that I want to make better? A lot of the solos that I'll play live, I'll quote the record, or sometimes I'll play, because I know that there's probably a few guitar players out there who are going to be like, let's see if you can, and I'll rip all the stuff that I'm doing on the record, and I'll say, but what if I add this, And then that'll stick around for a little while. Like last night, for instance, we there's a long go off at the end of Ghosts. Mm-hmm. That's always just sort of let's see what happens tonight. I'll add like line cliches in there that everybody's heard, and then Chris will jump on that. And then I'll start ripping around that, and then we'll go to another line cliche that everyone's heard, and just sort of try to build it in intensity until we just stop. And then all of a sudden we do what Dave calls it, pass the goddamn ketchup. Like, the 3/4 thing, which is just dotted eighth, right?
Right.
And we'll change the tempo to that with the click still going. But yeah, stuff like that is super nerdy.
Dave, what questions do you have for Ian? Give me some nerd questions.
Actually, I'd love to know what rig you used on Ghost, like the solo. I know obviously it's a Strat.
Yeah. Oh, the Stevie Ray
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
Honestly, I think it was a deluxe and a matchless DC-30. And there was a microphone that was like a binaural that we used as a room mic.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I love the sound.
Oh, dude, the room sound on it is incredible.
Yeah, and it was it's a smaller studio Vespa, which is long gone now, but it had a nice, really great sounding live room that was smaller.
Yeah. That solo it just jumps right out of that track.
Oh,
It's
thanks.
Totally,
Yeah, that solo was I had a hard time getting there.
Yeah.
Just for the, like when we were doing the demo.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm dicking around with this, and I'm doing a little more expensive stuff with that, and trying to like it was sort of Robin Ford, Mike Stern rip lines, like where they're a little more expensive note choice.
Believe me,
Didn't
you
work.
really did nail that tone, man. I was like,
Oh, thanks.
dude, that's Let's Dance, man.
Yeah,
That's totally
that hurt too. Like I think it was on 12s or 13s.
Man.
It was a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I was like, let's go legit. And
Yeah.
I was like, that was really legit.
You nailed it, man.
Yeah,
Great.
I do it now, and just on that guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big Stevie Ray guy. I was a big Stevie Ray guy for a while. And then I started, once I saw that everybody was a big Stevie Ray guy, I was like, I'm not a big Stevie Ray.
Okay, what about...
Not that I dislike it, it's just that I moved on to something else.
Well, it's interesting. So Robin Ford and Mike Stern, those are
oh, yeah.
I can see Robin Ford, but Mike Stern?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about
Chromosome? I went to Berkeley, and he was big for all the guitar guys at Berkeley. That's when Chromosome was... We used to do chromosome clinics and stuff, and just because it's not too far down the, I don't have to read a chart or anything,
right?
Because I'd be toast if I did. But and yeah, I just think he's funky, he's groovy, and his lines are just they're bop lines, but there's something rock and roll about him. I don't know if it's his tone or if it's his touch, but you can always tell when it's him.
Yeah. Dave?
Holdsworth.
Oh, yeah. That's another day. It's just, to me, it's like Julian Lage, where I'm just like, I'm just in awe of it.
Yeah.
But, I'll try to rip.
Did you ever meet Holdsworth?
Never met him. Our old bass player said he was a real sweet guy.
Very nice guy.
But no, he's just that's a whole other mountain that's so far away.
Yeah.
I'll try to rip the touch, like the no pull-offs, just all hammers kind of thing.
Actually, I hear it in your choral work sometimes.
Yeah, well, I
Sort of
sort of got there through the back door, like through EJ. Like I think a lot of his sort of those stacked chords.
Yeah.
And then I hear what he's doing with it. And it's like the same thing, but with some sort of a lot more math thrown in.
Right.
But there's something very, very beautiful about that style of playing. But it is, I can do it for a bit, and it's nowhere near what Holdsworth does. Like I'm still doing it with my same couple licks that I know, and I can actually get it kind of sounding legit.
Yeah,
and then I just start picking, and I just get to turn the tone back up and start going for it.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. It's great. There's one solo on the new record where I kind of, I did a little tip of the hat to Holdsworth, because I was just like, and it's from one of those sort of excursions where I started trying to dick around with his thing.
Yeah.
But his thing he's an alien.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised that he wasn't, more widely revered. In the guitar community, he certainly is. He's on Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore, yes.
But just, overall, because as a composer, it's like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah.
where's this coming from?
Maybe he'll get rediscovered in 10 years or something.
Yeah. See, he just needed a every breath you take kind of.
Well, I mean, Eddie, the Road Games record, Eddie connected him with Ted Templeman, got him a deal.
Yeah.
And, it's just tough. He had songs with vocals. The IOU record has, but
there are melodies and stuff that he plays where you're just like, oh, that's why they should have shone a spotlight on that a little more. Just gone back and let people go back to the trough of that before you start.
It's interesting because Holdsworth is a person whose records I go back to a lot, and they really never lose their. They hit me the same way all the time, and I'll go through periods where I'll just pick.
Where are you doing stuff that kind of sounds?
I just was, he's another person that came up when I was in college. The IOU Records 82. They recorded, I think it was in 80, but it came out in 82. And I remember going to see him on their first tour in Rochester. They played this place called Red Creek. It was about 400 seats. And he was, I got there and nobody knew what he looked like, but I'd seen pictures of him. And he was sitting at the bar drinking before the show. People were coming into the club and I was like,
he likes
I was like, that's Allan Holdsworth there. So I went over and sat down and talked to him. And it was so nice.
Cool guy.
And and always hated his playing.
Yeah, I heard that about him too. He
was
really down on himself.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I played terribly tonight. I said, what are you talking about?
Changed the world.
Are you at the same were you at the same concert?
Yeah. There's no knowing what goes on in the mind of somebody who's
I need to ask you this. Do you ever practice things anymore?
all the time.
Well, like, what are you practicing lately? What do you warm up with?
This is what I'm warming up with. I'm keeping the pick is in contact with the string the whole time.
Okay.
So it goes over, the string comes under. And
Okay.
Sort of push the string out of the way, but never lose
Okay,
contact.
and what is that doing?
It helps things get dialed. So if I started with, that'll loosen up some muscles.
Yep.
That kind of thing. Like the sort
That's
of one
alternate
note.
pick too.
Yeah. But get that going, and that's just sort of loosen things up. But then I always like to focus things in, and I'll get a metronome going, and I'll start dividing from quarters to triplets, to eighths, and keeping everything really tight. On the road, it's like starts with all that stuff, and then I'll start working towards specific things. That depending on what our set list is, like Million Days is a pretty hustly solo.
Right.
I think it's 131 BPM. So I did 16th note triplets at 131. I want to do 16th note triplets at 136.
Why? So that you have that
More in the
extra
tank.
room? Yes.
More in the tank, and then 131 feels like a breeze. But there are 16 note triplets at 135, and I digress. So I just want to make sure everything's covered, and then I'll rip certain things that are in certain songs and make sure that any of the sort of tougher stuff. If there's a jump or if there's a I just want to make sure that it's all dialed and it's sort of it's mental as much as it is physical for me.
All right, so you have a guitar warm and a vocal warm up.
Oh yeah, and you know what? All that being said, some of my favorite shows have been when we got messed up at the border. We had a show in Detroit and we couldn't make it, and it was like, oh man. And I'm like staring at the record company person who made me cross the border, do a radio thing. This is a true story. Like not that long ago, we got to go do press and sing. Where was it? Windsor.
Okay.
We're gonna go do press, and I'll be back by the show.
Wait, in Windsor, but but Windsor's in Canada, so you don't have to cross the border.
Yeah, Detroit's in the United States.
Oh, wait,
So the show was in Detroit.
Oh, got it.
The press was in Windsor.
Okay, got it.
And I'm like, we shouldn't do a border crossing before a show. Everybody knows that, because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
You might get the jelly finger. You might just end up in a lineup that's going to last forever. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm like, this is a bad idea. But it's like, nah, the label really wants it. Cross the border, do the thing, rah, 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 yeah, we're across the thing, and come see us tonight. And then they play the song and get back in the car, gridlock. I'm in the passenger seat, I'm just like, I'm not the kind of guy to say, I told you so, but I'm looking, she's red-faced. The label rep, she's like, gets on the phone and like, mate, should we get a helicopter? Like, what are we going to do? Like, dude. So, yeah. And then, anyway, long story long, we finally get across the border. I think our set was, because we were opening, went from 45 to like, I think we had 20 minutes.
Oh, because you were
there
that
was
late?
there was no, I got out of the car and ran on stage.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And it was like, it was one of my favorites because there was no time to think, no time to prepare. You know, I was probably a little tighter and a little tighter.
Yeah.
But all that sort of went away. It was like, I didn't think I was going to get to do this. And now it's like, hey, you know, you just get out of the car, run, guitar on, you know, here's 4 songs or whatever. Yeah, there's something to be said for just being dropped into the middle of a rock and roll show.
Well, Ian, I appreciate you coming in today. This has
Dude,
been
I
amazing.
can't thank you enough.
Been so great meeting you in person,
Yeah,
and
you too.
I'm such a big fan.
And I to you. It's really great what you do. And, you know, thanks for having us in.
Appreciate it.